Welcome to Cultural Fluency Makers. I'm your host, David Wellish. Each week, we welcome leaders to share how they stay ahead of the ever-changing consumer landscape. With today's cultural transformation, top brands need to understand diverse consumer segments from Gen Z, Hispanic, and LGBTQ+, to gamers, wine enthusiasts, and basketball fanatics in Iowa. Their marketing strategies require them to keep the pulse on their consumers, but also their brand in the category to continue to grow revenue for the long term. Cultural Fluency Makers is sponsored by Collage Group, the only cultural intelligence engine that provides brand and consumer insights on the why that drives consumer behavior and purchase decisions. Let's get started. All right, we are very excited to learn from you today. So why don't we get started? And what a time to have this conversation. Given the cultural and the demographic landscape shifts that have taken place in the last 10, 15 years in this country, and especially given the current political context, what do you think is the role and the importance of inclusive marketing today?
I think if you step back and just look at what's taken place in the market dynamics, this has been a journey that we've been on for quite some time. I think first it began with getting smarter about identification of the different needs and different recommendations that you give to customers based on a deeper understanding of them. And as our ability to understand customers has grown, so has the changing dynamic of the landscape in which you use those tools to do it, right? And so if you think about where I was with McDonald's, our core market was that multicultural youth market, which today already makes up more than 50% of that market, are brown and black and deeply diverse cultural communities. By 2030, that will be the makeup of the country. And so the question becomes, as a marketer, how do you stay focused on continuing to drive the business and reflect that relationship and connectivity and intimacy and recognition of your customers so they feel like you recognize them and that they're known? And I would argue, without getting swept up into some of the noise that can always come along with marketers around this, the social political environment. My belief is if you always stay true to the brand and stay true to your customer, those things will always lead you to the truth of what you need to do as a brand and do the right things in the way you connect with them. And I think we're just in an influx that we've seen in this marketplace numerous times when you've got significant change in the dynamic makeup. We've seen it certainly with age in the past and the makeup of different aging demographics, and then growth of age, right? In terms of like getting about how big our current Gen Z market is. I think those things continue to hold true. And again, as long as marketers stick to the growth of understanding of where they need to connect with their customer and how they need to connect with them, that will be answers.
Tariq, how important is this for consumer organizations to get right?
Look, I think it's as important as it's always been. I would argue with the access to the data, with the access to the intimacy and the connection with customers. And frankly, the younger you go into these segments, the expectation is even greater that you have a deeper understanding of them, not only from a personal customization perspective, but frankly, a personalization perspective. And so if you think about the relationships that we have in our lives, you're now getting data that allows you to have an intimacy and understanding with a customer that they have demonstrated, particularly the younger end of the market, that when you add value through that relationship, when you demonstrate you can use that data in a way that recognizes them and adds value to them, then they're comfortable allowing you to have data. If you create dissonance or you disconnect with an understanding or you abuse that intimacy that they've been able to provide you through an understanding of them, then they've also been very, very clear. They'll turn that data signal off and they will disappear as your customer. So I think it's absolutely critical that you take advantage of this opportunity to endear yourself, create that trust, and create that knowing relationship with your customers.
As you so well know, America is rapidly changing in its demographic and cultural landscape. Diversity is accelerating. And with that in mind, how does that change the way marketing ought to be working? What role does inclusive marketing play in your overall marketing strategy? What do you think has changed? Marisa, how do you see it evolving?
Yeah, I mean, it's the question of the century, right? And it's interesting that people are talking about the changing demographics now because the reality is they've changed. I mean, our America looks very different today than it did, gosh, even 5 years ago. If you look at Gen Z or below, it's already majority minority. And it's not simple minority where you're looking at segments, it's all intersectional, right? We have ethnicities, multi generations. There's so many layers that really, as a marketer, you know, inclusion is everything. The thing as a marketer is you have to connect at a very personal level with your audience. You have to see who your audience is. You have to know who they are and engage with them in a very unique way. And you can't do it in generalities. You have to do it in a very personalized way, right? So knowing the diversity and being extremely inclusive to speak to every single individual in a way that connects with them personally is the challenge of a marketer today.
How important is it, you think, for consumer brands to get this right? And your experience, Marisa, is so great. You've managed core brands, you've managed a Hispanic P&L, among the only ones in the industry to have done that, and now you're in this sort of massive mass market, media brand. How important is this for brands to get right?
I mean, it's critically important. The demands of the consumer today are that they don't want advertising. They want to have a relationship with brands. They don't want to be segmented. They don't want to be part of a quote unquote segment. They want, they're their own person. Who I am goes way beyond being a Latina, right? There's so many different layers and passion points and ways that I, behave and engage and get motivated. And brands really have to dig deep to get to a place where consumers are going to want to engage, right? And their expectation is that you're engaging with them 24/7 and everywhere they are. So not just linear, right? But they're everywhere today. Social, digital, you name it, right? Wherever I am, I expect brands to come to me and engage with me, not the other way around. So those expectations are here, and if as a brand you cannot meet them, then you won't be successful.
So over the past decade, Cheryl, there has been a significant demographic shift in this country. And, maybe starting with this question, how has that impact your approach to marketing? What's different? And I know you guys are doing a ton in this space, so it'd be great to start there.
I mean, the truth is, it's a very interesting situation. Of course, we understand the dynamics and the shifts that are happening from a demographic standpoint, but we have a different segmentation approach, and it's all about segmentation around passions. So we call it a passion-based segmentation or strategy. This ensures that no matter who we're talking to, we're focused on what matters to them, what they're passionate about, what they're interested in. And we segment around 10 passion categories, from music to sports to culinary to travel and more. And if you think about it, let's just take one of those passions of music, for instance, and it's one we've invested heavily in. If you think about music, it transcends markets, it transcends cultures. And, we've invested in this experiential marketing around ensuring that people get closer to their passion. And so we struck a partnership with Live Nation, which includes major venues, which includes multiple music festivals as well, the Grammys, the Latin Grammys, most recently Lady Gaga. And we invest around that passion, and we activate and ensure that our cardholders get closer to their passions. So no matter what the demographics, what it comes down to is their passion and what they care about.
Cheryl, this is and I've seen it and I know about it, and you guys are very unique in this very powerful and compelling approach. So let me ask you this. So I understand the segmentation scheme. I guess question is, do you feel like does does race and ethnicity drive the expression of those passions? Is it different given who you are, or not really, and there's no difference from a marketing tactic perspective?
Listen, we understand culture and cultural nuances all around the world. We're a global marketer. And I can give you one example of how execution shifts depending on the culture, the target, et cetera. But, we launched a Sonic brand several years ago, recognizing the shift in technology that was happening and the rise of audio channels like podcasts, like what we're doing right now. And we recognize that sometimes our brand won't be able to be seen. And in those cases, it needed to be heard. And we did just create one melody in one music genre. We created a melody that could be then leveraged across multiple music genres, whether that's Latin music, whether that's particular culture in Asia, et cetera. So we have hundreds of these versions of the Sonic brand to fit how we execute and who we're targeting, in any execution specifically. And just note that even we have a AI music generator, actually. So on top of those tracks, we can generate new ones using Gen AI as well. So, there's a number of ways we'll adjust. But one thing is we ensure that passion-based portfolio that we activate against is one of the most diverse set of assets that reach our consumers that we go after, whether that's, Gen Z or whether that's, a different cultural demographic that we're going after. We ensure, just think League of Legends for a second. Back in 2018, we became the first sponsor of League of Legends, right? Recognizing that the youth, we saw that trend coming, and then that even grew further, gaming after COVID. We're making sure we curate assets that solve for every segment.
In that, in a holistic way, meaning that it touches everybody in a one holistic campaign, or that the campaigns are in fact, or the assets are segmented, as you said, like Gen Z, for example. Are they segmented by generation, or segmented by personas, or segmented by whatever it may be? Or is it that across the board you're touching everybody?
I think across the board, we're touching everybody. We do a little bit of both, right? So we do general campaigns against a particular passion. Like we just had our Lady Gaga program in the US, and we recognize when you get an asset like Lady Gaga, this again transcends cultures, transcends demographics. And we gave people an opportunity to be part of her abracadabra dance video. And so, these 32 cardholders came together, and we're using a campaign that's general. And then we might have things like, Copa America, where
Yep.
we're specifically getting after and we're ensuring we're in channels that reach the Latin community, and that are speaking to them, in a way that matters to them, that's genuine, authentic, et cetera. So we do both.
That's that makes sense. And from a maybe outside Mastercard, I wonder whether you have a perspective as a marketer around the importance of dealing with culture, like and how critical, how important, and how crucial is it for consumer brands and organizations to do this right? There's so many terms, right? There's like inclusive marketing. There's right, like there's so many things around. What's I wonder what's your perspective?
My perspective is, I mean, listen, I work for a global company here, and we execute our campaigns and marketing at a very local level. And that's designed very specifically to ensure that we're connecting on a cultural level. And so it's really important that we're able to do so. Now, if you think about the importance of connecting in culture, again, there's a formula for if I want to reach large scale audiences with a message, there's a formula for doing that, and you spend an awful lot of money. And in this day and age, people's attention spans are significantly reduced. We say like 8 seconds is your attention span, the size of a goldfish, which is crazy. And so if you're going to break through, you have to lean into what matters to people. And so being culturally relevant enables you to do that. You're talking on a level with people on what they care about and how they want to be talked to and engaged with. Things, you're not disrupting their day, you're actually adding value to it. And if you do that, you get people to talk about you. And so in a highly competitive category, this is really important because we're going to earn media, not just rent media. That's one. And then two, if you're really going to create an emotional connection with people, it has to be culturally relevant. You have to be engaged in an authentic, genuine way. And that's why I believe, this passion strategy works, or any brand should be thinking this way. Again, we're in a world where disruption is not the best experience for consumers. So how do you fit in people's lives? Right? Like, think about this. We have priceless restaurants all around the world. This isn't a traditional set of marketing. This is understanding the passion of culinary and fitting into people's lives in a way that matters to them, where they get to go experience an amazing food experience related to that local culture or that local city. And, and this is how you win the hearts and minds of consumers.
Given America's rapidly changing demographic and cultural landscape, what role do you believe cultural intelligence, even inclusive marketing, plays in the overall business landscape for consumer organizations?
Oh, a lot. I mean, you cannot ignore both topics, culture and intelligence. Both of them are extremely important in any organization, and you put them together even more, right? And in our case, avocados, they have been a cultural phenomenon for many years, right? If you see our most important times of the year relate to big cultural moments: the Super Bowl, Cinco de Mayo, New Year's Eve, football season, right? A lot of big events that in the country, they mean a lot from the culture point of view, and they are also highly inclusive of many type of people, right? You don't see football fans as one specific demographic. There are fans in every single ethnic and cultural group in the US, right? So we need to understand those dynamics to really play with them and make the brand and the business grow, right? And when we started the organization, it was exactly like that. I came from CPG my whole life, so when they hired me, I knew nothing about avocados or produce, so I needed to understand a lot the category, the consumer, the dynamics, the cultural effect around it, and only with research intelligence was the only way that I could make myself more intelligent and understand where are the opportunities that we had at the beginning, and it was extremely important to build up the organization that we have right now. Without it, it would have been a miss hit for sure, because it was very hard to move from a packaged good that does a very specific type of marketing to something that is fresh, unbranded, unpackaged, but that we wanted to create the same branding and CPG emotions that we have created for other products in the past.
Um, that's great, Alvaro. As America gets more polarized, it gets more fragmented. As diverse America drives so much of the growth for so many categories in this country, um, I think most brands and most marketers understand how important it is to win with those consumers and understand cultural intelligence. Yet it's challenging. Like it's why what's hard? What are the key challenges here? Because in some ways, one approach to this would be it's marketing 101. You go after the growth consumers. What's hard?
Well, I think it's very hard to understand what's your place in that narrative and what's your role as an organization, as a brand. There are very successful dairying brands sometimes that they want to pick a fight and they want to have a cultural moment and a social position and defend things that sometimes are not popular from the politics point of view, from the social point of view, and we need those type of brands, right? There are brands that are going to pick fights that we need them to fight. But also we need to understand, I think, David, that not every brand needs to pick a fight,
Yeah.
and every brand has a role, has a reason to exist. And in our case, this is something that we've been thinking a lot about. First of all, we have a very unique situation because we report to the government. I everything that avocados from Mexico puts out there in the market has to be approved by the USDA. So we have to be politically cautious in many ways. But one of the things that we learned throughout the years is that our position is a little bit different. Our role in this world is a little bit different, and the way that we express it is that we want to make people healthy and happy. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, it doesn't matter what type of ethnic or cultural group you are or your support. You're all going to have a great time with a bowl of whack, and you're all going to get healthier by eating good fats. So we think that our role as an organization, as our brand, is making people happy and healthy every single time. And I think at this moment when we have this big division in our country, right, when we have so many people fighting for many things, that is so hard to sometimes get along with the people that think different from you. A bowl of whack can fix that. And you can have a great time in a Cinco de Mayo, regardless of who you have in front of you, right? And we really believe in that. That's our purpose, our inspirational purpose that we built for the organization is related to that, making people healthy and happy. And we think that that's the role that we need to keep on playing moving forward and be cultural relevant with that type of message, right? Now, not everyone has it that easy, I would say, right? Sometimes when you have other type of products, you need to pick those fights, and but you need to understand, I think, as a company and as a brand, what's your role? That's the big question. What's your reason to exist beyond that inspiration that we all want to create? Is really what this business is all about, and when you get it, you will know if you need to fight or not.
I love that. So really being anchored on your own brand values.
Totally. And you know what I think is very important because purpose, for example, is something that it's been, in my point of view, sometimes mistaken a little bit, right? It feels like there are some people and some companies that they think if they are not relating their purpose to charity or to a big cause or something like that, they're not doing things right. And I believe the opposite. I think that a good purpose has to be strategically grounded in what the company wants, right? So when you find that making people healthy and happy for us, that is highly related to our business purpose and our business strategy, then you have a full circle, right? Because you can really do things where you feel proud, you feel inspired, but at the same time, you're helping the business and you're not 100% doing something different. So I think that there's always a connection there.
So, given the demographic landscape changes that we have seen in this country in the last 15, 20 years, I am curious, how do you see the role and the need for cultural intelligence and cultural insights for consumer organizations today?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pivotal. It's it's the cornerstone between relevance and growth is having an understanding of the consumer within the culture. And that's what separates kind of those that will go high and those that will be mediocre and kind of lose out long term. Especially nowadays. Look, like everyone knows that, it's just getting more complicated. It's a noisy market, regardless of where you are. Everyone's battling for attention, everyone's battling for loyalty. And I do think the difference will be in cultural fluency or cultural intelligence as we see it. Like, how much do you really understand people and not as individual people, but the context of the communities that they belong to? And how much you can convey that in a very natural, authentic, and respectful way. That's going to be the game changer for brands.
Beautifully said, Monica. As America gets more fragmented, more polarized, and as we see diverse segments driving the growth of most categories, we hear this being a priority. What's hard? Like what is challenging about what you just said?
Well, doing great things is hard. It's not easy, and that's why not everyone does it. Um, I think there's a couple of things. One, I saw, not only in the environments that I've worked across, especially in the beginning, is that there's a risk aversion that happens. It's kind of taking a stance is really deemed as becoming political, and therefore people, and executives want to back off, especially initially. And like fear of getting it wrong too leads to a watered down message. So all those things is people would rather play it safe. And what we found is that that's the riskiest move now that you can give. It used to be that the more kind of you didn't step into the arena, the better it was. But now you step out of the arena and you're forgotten. You're done. You don't stand for anything. So this risk aversion is really becoming more important to get over. And the way you get over it is just really understanding culture, people, how they interact, and with data, with understanding, with human insights, in order to overcome that. The other thing, I think it's also there's two things that I think make it hard. That is part of the internal dialogue that happens within a company. So, risk aversion, navigating complexities is hard. I mean, the more communities, the more you have to break it down, the more nuances, the more work you have to do, the more messaging you have to do, the more, it's navigating all that complexities, especially as organizations become more matrix and, complicated themselves. Internal alignment is difficult within a company. There's different areas of the organization that want different things. So kind of escalating that. So those are the things that I think internally just make it difficult. And externally, we said about the watered down messaging. The other thing is I've seen oversimplification or the opposite, which is stereotyping. So if you look at it within the organization, there's a lot of complexities. And then the messaging, how you do that in a respectful way, in an authentic way that lands is also difficult. So that's where people are like, this seems very complicated. I'm going to stay out of the game. So I understand how it's hard, basically.
That's a wrap on another episode of Cultural Fluency Makers. Thank you for joining us. Please share your comments and what you would like to hear more about. Be as specific as possible. For show notes and more, please visit culturalfluencymakers.com. This show is proudly sponsored by Collage Group, unleashing the power of cultural intelligence to fuel brand growth. Please follow Collage Group on LinkedIn, and we will see you next week.